into the occult, and by getting into it, I mean during my studies of the occult, uh, the idea of trauma-based mind control was brought up quite a bit, and in a sense, it is, I guess, fracturing someone's mind to be used for whatever purposes, inflicting some kind of mental trauma, as the name implies, to then have either control of a person or have them feel a specific way, control their actions and their decisions later in life. So when I was, hearing about that, I would learn a lot about occult organizations, quote unquote, or, you know, like families that would purposefully abuse their children to keep the cycle of abuse continuing. And a lot of times these organizations would be local satanic churches or things like that, but not just what you would say. I guess it would be like dark occult organizations, like a little bit deeper, higher level than just your standard, oh, this person happens to be a Satanist kind of thing. But like some of those organizations would purposefully have their children get abused in various different ways, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually, to continue the cycle to the next generation and the next generation. And what that also causes is a lot of times with abuse, it will cause the person to either want to be very dominant or very submissive. And both of those things, somebody who wants to be extremely dominant and somebody who wants to be extremely submissive, can both be good for a ruling class that wants control. You might say, well, why would a ruling class or, those quote unquote in power want other people to be dominant or to be in like a left brain imbalanced state? Give me one moment. The submissive part makes sense. They would want people to be submissive and easily controlled and manipulated. But why would why would a ruling class want people under them to be like dominant and aggressive? And that's because they would need a class under them, but also above the submissive class. And I'm using the term class very loosely. It's more of like a pyramid. They would want others to basically do what they want and feel like they have power, like this middle class, like they would almost be like a lower end predatory animal, like a cat versus a rat. A rat itself is still like a predatory animal. It'll eat other animals, but it has its own, like, it is prey for other animals as well. Where I guess the better thing would actually be an owl, a bird, and a rat, or not a bird, an owl, a cat, and a rat. Like, a cat in itself is a very predatory animal, but it itself is prey to, say, an owl. So, you have these people who are mentally manipulated, or not manipulated, that's the wrong term, I'm getting ahead of myself, are traumatized to either be very, and end up being very submissive and easily controlled, which happens a lot, or you have those being traumatized and then are very domineering and want to control. That's where you get a lot of people in like the police force and stuff, and police, military. They want that sense of power over somebody else. And this is, I'm saying broad, like this is broad strokes. I'm not saying that every person in like fits into this, and every cop is a bad person, or every person that's in the military is a bad person, or has been manipulated in this way or been traumatized. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they want people of these types because they can use their internal dominant controlling mindset from their own psychological trauma they can use these people to do their bidding to then control the very submissive and, in a sense, you'd say weak or non-aggressive, like lower level. Like they can use this almost as their police force in a sense, or they can use these middle ground manipulators and like very dominant, wanting to be almost like pseudo-psychopathic individuals who crave power but aren't at that level. They're not the high end, the deep dark occultists, who are running the world, or this like priest class of individuals who are doing the grand scheme manipulation of the world kind of thing. They're lower, but they want that. They want a lower class that is below them but above the people to do their like dirty work, so to say. And getting back to the original thing, I would always hear stories about, what was the gentleman's name? Jay Parker. He was on Mark Passio's podcast or radio show, What on Earth is Happening. He was on that a lot in the early episodes, and he would talk about when he was a kid, all the horrible things that were done to him in an attempt to have him continue this cycle of abuse and just horrible, existence, to make him, a manipulator as well, somebody who wants to control or be controlled, however, that fits into that, because that's what they want. They want that middle class there. And class, like I said, is a broad term. But something I've noticed, and it's really clicked over the last, couple years for me. One moment. Is that the thing that has clicked for me over the last couple of years is almost I'm seeing this mindset of domination and submission and, people wanting to control or wanting to be controlled or being very submissive in general. It's not something that's needed to be done by, like, directly by this ruling class or these like organizations to keep their own organizations going generation through generation, while it still most likely is being done on that smaller level. I'm seeing it a lot in I wouldn't say youngest it's obviously not the youngest generation. It would be like, I guess, Gen Z. I believe it's like the old, like, not old teenagers, but like young adults. I don't know when the cutoff is, but I see it a lot in, well, I'll just be honest, it's the generation that I was born in, those who are like under 30 or under 28 or something. I don't know where the cutoff is, but older than like the children and young teens. I've seen a lot of, where do I even want to start with this topic? Give me 1 second. In, like, these children, most fall into one or the other, or both, but it's through either it's the media that's consumed. Everything is almost, how do I say this, sexualized for this generation. And I keep almost wanting to say the kids, but they're not kids anymore. And if I do say like, oh, it's the kids, I'm not referring to actual children. I'm referring to the young adults. But I'll be honest, a lot of this generation's adults are like adult children. So the quote unquote the kids nowadays, the young generation, however you would want to say this, they are very much so in this either wanting to be dominant or submissive mindset. And a lot of it happens because of, sexuality or, well, in a lot of cases, sexual trauma. You take kids, and here's where it gets back to the trauma-based mind control. You take kids who are, exposed to sexualization from such a young age, or it's implanted subconsciously in their minds, even if they didn't experience trauma at a super young age. It's in their minds, either subliminally through media that's taken in, or television, or what they might see. Even the kids shows and stuff, they have things in them that, make a lot of the kids think about things before they're at an age where they would actually understand what's going on. So then you get kids who are, by the time they're, actually hitting puberty, they're, hormones are just going crazy, and it's almost uncomfortable to talk about. I don't want to talk about it detailed, but you take this and you have these kids who are either so obsessed with the idea of sex and things like that, or you have kids that are so anti, they push against it. And a lot of times that is from other individuals being so sex crazed that they end up pushing things onto the people that they're with, because relationships are starting younger and younger now. And the kids think that they're I say kids, I'm talking about Gen Z still, but by the time that they were in middle school or high school, they think it's all about sex and relationships and this and that, and when they don't even know what that is yet, but they think they do. So then you get kids, I keep saying kids, but in this sense, yes, you get kids who experience things at a young age because it's so pushed down their throats from everything that they take in, and they don't know what they're doing, or there's other quote unquote kids that want things or force things on others. And the amount of times I've heard about people being sexually assaulted by other person that they know, or somebody they're in a relationship with, or things like that, or what they would consider sexual assault, or traumatized, whether it was directly assault or not, to where they themselves get fucked up because somebody else is, so addicted to, either pornography or the idea of sex, or they go, a lot of times go one of two ways. Either they themselves, all of a sudden, they're addicted to sex and they want to continue and learn more, or they go the full opposite direction and almost loathe it in a sense, or they become quote unquote asexual and have non-existent interest in it. And that in itself is part of that mind control, because they're being traumatized not by a directed intentional thing, but they experience trauma because of these, like I said, they're not kids, but I keep saying kids around them, force on them, even if they themselves are not affected by things. And it's just growing and growing in mass. And on top of that, take away the trauma part of it. These kids, sex and intimacy and stuff like that, a huge thing I've seen with this generation, huge, and I was talking about the Gen Z generation, is that intimacy and love has been replaced with either domination or submission. It seems like all the relationships and sex in general has turned from, this loving, caring thing, it has turned into, it's just always who's going to be, dominant or submissive in every relationship. And that in itself feeds the same idea of trying to make people not forced, but wanting a dominant class and a very submissive class. Which, once again, is just a bigger cog in that machine. But they don't have to, do it individually, sect by sect. I need to be able to mute myself easier so I'm not coughing, not because of the cold that I have. But even though I have a cold, I want to do this. I'm gonna put out the information. want to get out there and talk about this kind of stuff, even if people aren't really interested in listening to it. I'm gonna talk about it, gonna get it out there. And it's just this rampant, growing idea. Not idea, but it's like a shift. The generation, this generation has replaced intimacy with, like, you know, just roughness and either being dominant or submissive, and it's exactly what that not higher power, like the powers that be would want. They want a submissive class, and they would want those that they can use to dominate that submissive class. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, kinky sex or rough sex or anything like that. What people do in their bedrooms is their choice. That's not what I'm saying. It is the fact that it is so much bigger than actually just, it's not. It has basically replaced love and intimacy. It has grown so massive. And then on the other hand, like I had said, a lot of times these kids will get, traumatized by somebody else or something else. And instead of falling into that wanting to be dominant or submissive, they're almost, asexual. They're almost afraid of sex or life experience. They're afraid of going there. They have no interest. They have no interest in procreating, no interest in continuing, which in itself, I'm not saying that the goal of humanity needs to be, or every individual person needs to be procreation. We have billions of people on this planet. Not every single person has to procreate. That's not what I'm saying. But they're traumatized and have almost either a fear or their natural hormones and everything else get fucked up because they lose their sex drive. They lose, and that is a horrible thing. Horrible. And it's so rampant and so common that there are people who experience these things, and in some cases they could be both. They could be very, as wild as it sounds, and it almost doesn't make sense what I'm going to say, but where they can almost be afraid of sexual experiences, yet they only crave the borderline violent or aggressive sexual experiences. And that, would be part of that, that intimacy being replaced with, BDSM or whatever, rough sex, And that for people to be, there's just so much. It's such a convoluted mind game that's going on in the world, and even try to express everything about it. Mind you, I'm not scripting this thing beforehand. I am taking the topic, running with it, talking about all the different things. That I can think of with it. And it's a lot. It's a genuine, just very mentally taxing thing to think about, with all the different aspects of it. And that's exactly what they would want. It is a giant mind game. it's it would be made to be horrible and hard to see it, especially from within it, because it's harder to pull yourself out of then. If my generation would not see how these things would affect them negatively, and I already know if I tried to like talk to people, say that I might know that are in that mindset like that. I'm sorry that the microphone picks up everything. I'd probably get something back about how I'm either insensitive or, you know, that I'm just, against what they're into or things like that. And that's not what I'm saying. And it seems really hard for people to not get offended by something, or if they do get offended, to be able to slow down and take in the information without assuming what I'm saying before I say it. It seems like it's almost harder to have conversations with a lot of people who are in this, and it can be hard sometimes to do that, because like I've been talking about, this is a thing that I've noticed in my own generation, something that I notice a lot in people that I've spoken to. And trying to one-on-one discuss something with a lot of the people, it almost turns into an argument or a debate. And that's fine, you can, debates are fine, disagreements are fine. But to be able to show somebody this information or tell somebody about this and say, hey, well, the reason you might be feeling this isn't exactly what you think. Do you see how this could be affecting you, how this could be used? It's very hard for people to see. It's very hard for somebody to look at it and stand back and say, hey, wow, this is, I was manipulated. I was this or that. I was wrong. That's like the hardest thing for anyone to ever say. Because mind you, the kids, in this sense, maybe it would be the kids. A lot. A lot of them, at a ridiculously young age now, with like the internet being so prevalent, they find things like pornography. They find things on there, and it is not. Sorry, I keep muting myself and disappearing. Like I said, I have a little bit of a cold. Probably hear it in my voice too. A lot of this pornography is very aggressive, very rough. It very quickly would evolve into, like I said, BDSM, domination, submission. The at a young age, they start thinking that this is what sex is, this is what relationships are, this is what love is, when it's not, and it's changing their mind. So by the time that they are really truly old enough to start experiencing things, people either coerce or they, I guess you'd say pester, bug somebody else into doing something that they wouldn't want to do, or having experiences, or God forbid they, outright directly, I don't think I can say the word on YouTube, but it starts with an R, other people, or sexually assault them. And mind you, that even sex is happening so much younger, like with the younger people, like, are having sex and doing things, and it's probably before they should be experiencing those kind of things. It's mentally not, they're not mentally there. They're not, grown up enough. They're not mature enough. That's the word. I don't know why I was blanking on the word mature, to be able to understand and properly know what's going on and the ramifications of everything that they do. And then this whole mind thing spreads because somebody gets traumatized because somebody else wanted to do something and they didn't, and they either did it anyways or they were forced to, or things like that, because this generation is so fucking obsessed with sex. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sex. Not at all. It's just such a rampant, need, and it's not even about intimacy anymore. It's about rough, borderline violent sexual experiences. So yes, people get traumatized all the time. And how easy is it now for this generation to have something seriously traumatic happen and they get, oh my goodness. You see I don't really use social media very often like that, but the trends, I know a lot of other people who do, and the trends of mental illness or schizophrenia even, or multiple personality disorders and things like that being so prevalent in people to where it's it's normalized. They've normalized mental illness and schizophrenia to where the generation thinks it's cool to be traumatized. It's trendy almost. And that feeds into it too. Because then you take the kids who aren't traumatized, who haven't directly experienced that negative trauma, and they can start taking their experiences that may not have been great, or they look back and say they regret something, and it twists in their head to where they think that that's trauma, even if it wasn't, because they would want to fit in. Now, obviously, these are huge brushstrokes. Not everyone fits into any of these, specifically one or more of these topics, but anyone could, if you know what I'm saying. There are people who do, but this is not everyone is affected like this. It's just extremely rampant, and I see it a lot because it's the generation that I am of, and a lot of, I see it a lot. Not necessarily always directly around me specifically, but online or around people that I know that know people, or potentially even in people that I know. So this whole generation is basically being traumatized, or not the whole generation, but a lot. I'm using too broad of strokes. A lot, and I mean a lot, of this generation has been traumatized or mentally manipulated through either, say, pornography, or even, like I mentioned earlier, subliminal messaging and ideas put into children's minds at a young age that they don't truly understand what's happening, but they know that they want something. All the kids shows, it seems, there's always, romance, or what they think is romance, or relationships, or flirtatiousness. At least I remember that from the early 2000s shows. You watch something on Nickelodeon or whatever, and it's always these subtle things, and when you're a kid you don't understand it, but then you start, your mind, the chemicals in your brain and whatever, they start working certain ways, and you react to things and respond to things. You don't actually know what's going on, but it's priming you so that way by the time you're already there, when you hit puberty, or when you start actually experiencing things later, or having, whatever, your hormones start working, you're already, wanting things that you wouldn't normally be wanting to experience, things, or grow, or not grow, but relationships. And it's just ramping everything up to be really, really, come on, fast from a really young age. And it leads to more trauma. It leads to more of this submissive or dominant mindset. And the thing is, why I even talk about this is that in a lot of cases, it extends beyond, the bedroom, quote unquote. That whole domination, submissive, those mindsets, the very meek or the very overly aggressive controller type. Like I said, a lot of police officers, a lot of those in the military, you find a lot of that, dominant mindset that might have started because of something sexual or whatever, but it's almost like, I wouldn't say a personality trait, but they want you in either a left brain aggressive state or a right brain submissive passive state. They don't want somebody who's balanced. They don't want somebody who is logical and emotional. They want somebody who's in one or the other, because that is what's going to fuel their ultimate goal, is keeping people imbalanced, which is happening through these traumas. A lot of people who are traumatized are mentally not well. A lot of times they're in a right brain imbalanced state. I'm saying that if they're like submissive, or if they're very dominant and very controlling, a lot of times it's a very left brain, logical, but aggressive state. Through this, it is causing people to normally split one way or the other, more than they already would. Through these traumas, through experiences, either being the person enduring the trauma or being traumatized. And normally, the ones that are victims of the trauma normally become very right brain imbalanced. And those who committed said traumas are probably, or caused said traumas are probably very left brain. And that's what they want. They want that division. They want a very divided state to where they can control those who want to be dominant, and those who are dominant will control the ones who are submissive for them. There's a song by The Doors titled Dead Cats, Dead Rats, and it talks extremely metaphorically about this topic. And at least that's how I interpret the song. I'd like to do a sequel, I guess, to this little stream here, and probably break down that song. I actually wrote a little essay paper because something I enjoy doing. Used to do in my free time a lot outside of music. I never published the papers anywhere or like even really put them out online. They were just something I'd write and share with friends and family. But I think it would be something fun to do in this format, as opposed to just having a piece of paper that I typed it on the computer, so I could just post it on like a social media post about it. But I think it'd be fun to read the little breakdown. I'll go back over it, review it. It's been years now, I think, since I wrote that paper, but definitely something that I'd want to do. But that song kind of talks about that whole idea of, what I was originally hearing about with dark occult orders and their wanting to traumatize, the kids, so that way by the time they're adults, they follow the same cycle, and they then continue it down further and further of wanting to, be controlling or dominant. And then that's that's in these lower order, like dark occult, I guess I wouldn't say institutions, but why can't I think of orders? Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking institution. It's kind of late, but I'm doing it. I'm talking about it because I want to, whether I'm tired or not. So you just gotta give me some credit. I'm also not scripting any of this. It's all just flowing. They are not the highest end, evil big bad guys, Illuminati or whatever people want to call them, the super big dark orders. These are like your local, secret cult kind of thing, or I wouldn't say cult, but like secret order. I know a lot of people would probably be like, "Oh, it's the Masons. Oh, it's this. It's the higher ups in the Satanic Church." But really, it could be your next door neighbor. It could be anyone. They might not necessarily need to meet in robes and in the woods every week and burn an effigy of something to sacrifice. It's an organized group of individuals that all have this same mindset, and normally they control the local government, the police force, the most institutions. They're in the schools, they're lawyers, they're whatever, and they normally want to have a leg up on people around them, and also to be in control. But they're not the big bad guys in control, but they feel that they have control, and they want more people in that. They want not everyone. They don't want to get everyone in there, because then who would there be to control? But they want to either continue their lineage so that way they can keep control down through the generations, or to be able to find others who would want to be within that, who have the same goal of being controlling manipulators. So that's why they want, mind you, more manipulators. Even the low end guys, they want that, and they want the people below them. So like the regular cops and the your local, your judges, your lawyers, your people with some kind of power or status a little bit. And then they have the submissive lowest class. Now I keep using the word class, and I keep explaining that it's not, like a class, but I guess it would be in that sense. It would be a class of control. It'd be a big pyramid. There's a couple really little tiny group of people at the top who have all the power, but then they need people to do their dirty work to be able to control the overall population. So, in short, see it a lot in my generation. Trauma-based mind control. Either people are very manipulative and cause trauma, or are traumatized themselves. A lot of it is due to far too young of an age getting exposed to things that children shouldn't normally be exposed to, but are. It warping their sense of, I guess, sense of reality, or intimacy is gone. It's become rampant with domination, submission in their sexual lives by the time they're older, and you get that, creeps into, the bigger picture of someone's day-to-day life. Now, not everyone obviously lives their life in a submissive or dominant mindset, but most of the time, if someone's in a balance, left brain and right brain in balance, absolutely. Most of the time, those who are right brain in balance, more submissive. Those in left brain in balance, more dominant. That's how it is. And a lot of it can be caused from, like I've been talking about. Then you get those who get traumatized. They are much more easily controlled. Those who are mentally ill or mentally traumatized, like I've been saying. A lot of times they are very submissive, very controllable, impressionable. And then you have those who may not have been traumatized directly themselves by another person, but still have experienced the trauma from what they were exposed to from such a young age, who have gone to the other direction of that very left-brained logical state. And on top of that, those who are traumatized as well aren't inherently always going to go into a right-brain state. They could be themselves continuing that cycle. They could be that very dominant, controlling, or potentially traumatizing themselves mindset. That's like you always hear about. Well, if one person was sexually assaulted, then only the next generation or one generation will beat its children, then the next one will, in like family lineages and stuff. Same concept. Sometimes somebody will be traumatized, and instead of going to that right brain state and being very submissive or meek, or, a lot of times, like I said, I see now it's become almost like asexual, like they lose all drive or interest in ever experiencing something, and even positively, because of a negative experience, and a lot of times, sadly, at such a young age. Because once again, so much has been pushed down the children's throats, in this sense of, it's in the television, it's on the internet, it's on everything, it's on social media, it's all over. So even if the parents try to keep the kids away from the internet, it's still in the shows, the cartoons, the movies. It's all around. So, I've just gone over the same thing a lot of times, but if you want the truth, it's probably a good thing. Repetition helps better understand something. Better, take something in better. Yes, this is a subject I've been pretty, as you can tell, vocal about. I thought it was a good standalone kind of topic idea, because there's so many aspects as compared to just dark occult organizations purposefully traumatize their kids, make it, a cycle repeat. It's well beyond that. It is not necessarily a society based on trauma, but in a sense, a lot of this society seems to be built around trauma, be it in relationships or just the amount, the overly done amount of like people that I see in my generation who have been traumatized or have either had negative experiences, or on top of that, from a young age are overly sexualized, or maybe not themselves sexualized, but have sexualized things pushed in their face to where by the time they are old enough to experience that, they're not exactly sure what they want, or it has been replaced with violent sexual acts or rough aggression as compared to intimacy and care and compassion. So yes, there's my whole rant about trauma-based mind control. I wouldn't say rant, but my overall talk about it. I believe that I'm going to end the stream here and start up a brand new one, just so that way this can be its own standalone thing if anyone wants to watch after the fact. I know the image is just straight up my background here, my what is this, PowerPoint? Yes, I opened up PowerPoint, not Word. But yes, it's a very, I feel, important topic that isn't talked about enough. How the masses or the population are controlled in this way. So I appreciate anyone listening up to this point. I do see there Caleb in the chat. I'm going to start a new stream. Might be a little bit more lighthearted this time. This got pretty deep and pretty, I guess, negative, quote unquote. But that's, not everything is sunshine and rainbows, so you'd say. And, before I go, I will answer your questions. Have I watched the movie Out of Shadows? More of a documentary, really. No, but is it available on any streaming platform or YouTube? I know YouTube has a lot of movies that are like licensed to them that you can rent or watch with ads. Is that on there at all? If so, feel free to send me it, or if you know any, or text me about it. But for right now, I'm going to stop the stream. Probably going to go grab something to eat really fast and start up a new one. Talk about some more lighthearted, quote unquote fun stuff. I've been streaming for about an hour. Oh, YouTube took it down. Okay. Yeah, I feel like that would be a good one to watch. Just from the title, it sounds like... I don't know. Oh, that's right. I think you were telling me about it. That's right. It's free on their website. Okay. Yes, that's right. Could you resend me that link? I know I can't click it from the live chat or anything, but yes, that does sound like something. It from the title of it, I don't know if it has anything to do with exactly. And the link is broken? What? I'm not saying like what, like are you saying the link to the you can't see the link through anything? What? Okay, that sounds like there might be something behind that. Huh. That is kind of wild. All right, let's test this. Copy. Google. I'm going to try this out. Paste, and then... Okay, yeah. No, I remember this now. Yep, I'm gonna watch that. That looks actually great. Well, there's a trailer. It was on YouTube. I don't know if that trailer's still on YouTube. Become a member. Wow, there's... Oh, okay, so that did send. I think I remember you telling me about that before, where it wouldn't work. Right, I'm going to end the stream really fast. Thank you all for watching. If you watch this after the fact as well, that's great. I apologize, not in advance, but after the fact, because I know that everything I do can be heard super loudly over this. But, yeah, so I'm working with what I got. So, goodbye for now.